When you're looking for a laptop that won't quit on you during those marathon workdays, you're not chasing a wall of specs, you're chasing reliability, ease of everyday use, and a price that actually feels like a win. I get it, you've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through endless tables of cores, clock speeds, and pixel counts, wondering if any of that really translates into a smoother workflow. The fear of dropping a few grand on a machine that ends up feeling like a glorified brick is real, especially when you need something that can handle CAD, 3D rendering, or heavy data crunching without turning your lap into a heatsink. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So, let's talk about the Dell Precision 7780 mobile workstation, and why it might or might not fit into that sweet spot between power and practicality. First off, this is a 17.3-inch laptop, which immediately tells you two things: you'll have a generous screen real estate for multi-window layouts, and you'll be carrying a machine that's more desktop-like in size. If you're used to juggling a 15-inch laptop and an external monitor, the integrated screen alone can replace that setup for many professionals who need color accuracy and space for detailed schematics. On the flip side, the larger chassis adds weight, so you'll feel the difference when you're lugging it through a crowded office or hopping into a car for a client site. The heart of the machine is a 13th Gen Intel Core i9-13950HX, a 24-core beast that can push up to 5.5 GHz. In real-world terms, that means compiling large code bases, rendering complex 3D scenes, or running multiple virtual machines simultaneously feels less like a waiting game and more like a smooth multitask. I've seen creators compare this sort of CPU power to having a compact workstation in your bag, the ability to spin up a full Blender render in under a minute, or to run a heavy simulation in engineering software without the dreaded CPU overload warning, is a tangible productivity boost. The downside? That raw horsepower comes with a noticeable fan noise when the CPU ramps up, and you'll see the battery drain pretty quickly if you try to run those workloads unplugged. For most on-the-go users, that means the laptop is best kept on a power source for intensive sessions, which is fairly standard for workstations in this class. Memory is where Dell makes a bold statement: 128 GB of CAMM RAM, running at 3,600 metric tons per second. That's more than enough for any professional workflow I can think of. Think of opening a massive 3D model in Autodesk Maya, hitting play on the animation timeline, and still having memory left for a Photoshop session with dozens of layers. This is the kind of headroom that eliminates the out-of-memory crashes that can ruin a deadline. The trade-off is that the RAM module is a proprietary CAMM form factor, which means you're tied to Dell's upgrade path. If you ever decide to swap out the RAM, you'll need to go through an authorized service channel, which can cost more than a standard Solderon Sodom upgrade. For someone who values future-proofing and doesn't plan to hand-assemble upgrades, that's a reasonable compromise. For a DIY enthusiast, it's a minor inconvenience. Storage is a single 1TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. That gives you fast boot times and rapid file transfers. Think of loading a 200 GB project archive in seconds, or moving raw footage from an external drive to the internal SSD without the usual lag. The downside is the single drive bay. If you're a video editor who routinely works with 4K or 8K footage, you may find yourself juggling external drives to keep the internal SSD from filling up. The SSD is replaceable, but again you'll need to procure a Dell-approved module if you want to keep warranty coverage intact. In practice, the 1TB size is a comfortable middle ground for most professionals, but power users should budget for external storage anyway. Now, the display. A 17.3-inch 1080p panel with 500 nits brightness and 99% DCI-P3 coverage sounds like a marketing headline, but what it delivers is a fairly vivid and color-accurate canvas for design work. In my tests, the panel held true to the advertised color space without the need for a hardware calibrator, which is a real time saver for graphic designers who need confidence that their work will look right on other screens. The anti-glare coating also helps when you're in a bright office or a sunlit conference room. The screen is 60 Hz, which is fine for most professional applications, but if you were hoping to use this laptop for high frame rate gaming, you'll notice the difference. That said, the Precision line isn't marketed as a gaming rig, so the refresh rate is perfectly aligned with its intended audience. A practical concern that often gets overlooked is the keyboard and touchpad experience. Dell equipped this model with a single-pointing palm rest keyboard that includes a smart card reader. For professionals who need to log into secure networks or use smart card authentication, that's a handy built-in feature. Typing on the full-size keys feels solid, and the layout is familiar enough that